The Home Secretary has confirmed the suspect arrested on suspicion of the murder of Ann Widdecombe was not known to the anti-terror organisation Prevent.
Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, Ann Widdecombe was murdered in her home. The circumstances of her death are extremely distressing. Counter-terrorism policing have now taken the lead in the investigation. As Lawrence Taylor, the head of National Counter-Terrorism Policing, has said, and I quote, "We now have new information and evidence that means counter-terrorism policing is leading the investigation. We are pursuing multiple lines of inquiry to establish the motivation for this attack." The police now have a suspect in custody, a 28-year-old white British man, and I can confirm to the House that this man was not known to Prevent.
And the Home Secretary invited the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, to meet the government organisation in the Home Office that manages security for politicians.
Security measures are kept under constant review to ensure MPs can carry out their duties safely. And I know that the police intend to issue guidance to MPs soon, and they will be contacting parliamentarians in their constituencies to offer support. I also recently commissioned the former Lord Chancellor, Sir Robert Buckland, to review the lessons from Sir David Amos's murder, including into required improvements to security for MPs working in their constituencies. I recognise the particular concern that the Reform Party will feel today, and of course Nigel Farage, the party's leader. I'm happy to offer a meeting for Mr Farage with the chair of RAVIC, the independent body within the Home Office that manages the security of those in public life.
Now, the Home Secretary, Shadow Home Secretary for the Conservatives, Chris Philp, paid tribute to Ann Widdecombe.
Ann was also a much-loved celebrity with memorable appearances on Strictly Come Dancing and Celebrity Big Brother, including being whirled around by, I think it was Anton Dubek. So we will all remember Ann fondly as a public figure who was always formidable, she was always charming, and she was always entertaining.
Richard Tice there. And the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, he pushed back against accusations that some MPs' security was prioritised over others.
Just for the record, every Member of Parliament is equal in the security to me. There is no difference between any member, I want to assure you. When things are brought to my attention, because we don't discuss security, I don't put out there what is happening, what has been done, but I reassure everybody that when it is mentioned to me, it is passed on to the security people to deal with. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that people don't think I do that. Lucy Pell.
The Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle there, and Reform's Richard Tice had this to say.
We are all reeling with shock, sadness and anguish at the loss of our Ann, and also the manner in which she has been taken from us. She was a colossus in public life, in political life, a legend adored and loved by millions and millions of people, including my own late mother, for whom she spoke so very warmly of Ann. She was a remarkable lady.
Deputy Reform Leader Richard Tice there in the Commons. And this time, welcome to the programme, Oli Wright, the policy editor at The Times. Hi to you, Oli.
Hello.
So what are you thinking, Oli? So we did hear from Shabana Mahmood inviting Nigel Farage to meet with the organisation inside the Home Office that is responsible for a politician's security, maybe taking some of the heat or attempting to take some heat out of the situation at that point. But there is plenty of heat in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is this is definitely embarrassing for Devon and Cornwall Police, who were keen to stress that, it wasn't a terrorism-related case and it wasn't politically motivated. And this about turn has really sort of given fuel to its critics who said that they sort of doubted that explanation in the first place. And, clearly it has now risen up the top of the political agenda, not least because it plays into very long-standing fears and concerns from Nigel Farage and other senior Reform politicians that the level of security available to MPs is not what it should be and is not commensurate with the risks that they face.
And Oli, there is a statement now from Reform UK. Let me just read you some of that. The statement accuses the police, the government and parliamentary authorities of deliberately ignoring their plea for stronger security for the Reform MPs. The party then says that it's resorting to paying for protection of its senior politicians as they enter and leave the Houses of Parliament because they say of the lack of security provided by the authorities. And this is from the House authority. A spokesman says any assessment of an individual MP's security arrangements or advice is subject to a rigorous risk-based assessment conducted by security professionals with input from police and a range of professional authorities. These are naturally kept under continuous review. And the Home Office, a spokesman there, said the Home Office has expanded police support for MPs away from the parliamentary estate, including by funding a full-time network of police officers to support MPs, locally elected representatives and candidates across the UK. That is from the Home Office. Oli, I wonder what you make of that. The Reform saying they're going to pay for their own senior politicians' security.
Yeah, I mean, they've said this in the past, and indeed I think they have done it, particularly with people like Nigel Farage, because there was a row some months ago now about the level of protection that Farage was getting from the parliamentary authorities, which Reform believed was not substantive enough for the risks that he faced, and that they had no choice but to pay for the additional security that he needed themselves. Clearly, the Home Office is keen to stress that it's a sort of operational decision. It's not one for politicians, and I think that is right. But it still doesn't sort of negate the fears that Reform have that, what they say they need, they're not getting.
All right. Oli Wright, Policy Editor at The Times, thank you so much. Now, a big welcome to Stephen Roberts, who's a former Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Met. Hello to you, Stephen.
Good afternoon, John. Hi,
great to have you here, Stephen. So what do you make of what you've been hearing? I mean, starting with the concern that MPs are perhaps, it's argued, not well enough protected. And in the case of Reform UK, that party says their call for greater protection is ignored.
Well, it's a curious thing. All MPs, and the Speaker himself has made this clear today, although he shouldn't have needed to, frankly, that all concerns around the security of MPs are passed on to the appropriate bodies. Anybody who knows about the security arrangements around MPs won't and shouldn't talk about them for very obvious reasons. But there is considerable care taken to make sure that there is appropriate security around all MPs and former MPs indeed, but appropriate to the actual level of threat to their physical harm.
Right.
It is not the job of the police or the Home Office or the House of Commons officials to protect members of Parliament from those who simply disagree with them and want to express that disagreement fairly volubly.
Okay.
And indeed, a lot of politicians, from my own experience, hate the fact that they sometimes are seen being protected by police officers and want very much to have that contact with the public.
And how then, tell me, Stephen, how is the vulnerability, the need for protection in the case of individual MPs or politicians, how is that assessed?
It's assessed by well-trained officers who will deal with each MP individually, because MPs' circumstances can be very different. For example, you can have an MP who has a constituency in the north of England, who has a property there and property in London, travels a lot between them, and needs protective measures perhaps at both places where he or she lives, whereas others will live locally in London and need less protection. But the advice has to be tailored by the well-trained officers, mostly common sense measures, but it's appropriate and it's proportionate to the level of risk that those individuals are running. So
what do you make of the Reform UK accusation that their calls for protection have not been heeded and that they mean to pay for their own protection in the case of their senior figures?
Well, if they choose to pay for their own protection, that's a matter for them. And I understand they've got plenty of funds to do that. But they cannot be protected, nor should they expect to be protected from people who merely disagree with them. I'm quite sure that each of their cases has been considered, as every MP's case is considered, to make sure that they get appropriate advice and appropriate assistance to keep them safe.
Okay, now, Devon and Cornwall Police, they were initially running the investigation. That's now been handed or taken over by the anti-terror officers. Is that embarrassing for Devon and Cornwall?
No, I don't think it is. And I last heard the Assistant Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall saying that at the stage that the investigation was at, there was nothing to suggest it was a politically motivated attack. Well, since then, there will have been increasingly thorough searches at the home of this individual who's been arrested. Any computers, any other IT equipment that he's got, there may be information on there. There may be written information, documentation that's been hidden that wasn't available to Devon and Cornwall. So if they found something that suggests a political motivation, it's right and proper that the counter-terrorist branch should take it on. And it's entirely appropriate that they will be supported by Devon and Cornwall Police. It's not embarrassing. It's merely a matter of this is the way some investigations go. And you don't know what you've got before you've investigated.
Okay, that's an answer to that. And what about the way that the Devon and Cornwall Constabulary dealt with the handling of information on this? They made it public that the man who was had been taken into custody and for questioning was white and British. Now there have been Reform UK calls that should be the case in every investigation. What do you make about the way Devon and Cornwall are dealing with that?
I think that was a sensible step at the time. Since events about a year ago now, there has been this intention or this concern that people will make assumptions about the race and the origins of any attacker in a situation like this. And in circumstances where Ann Widdecombe was to the right of politics, if I can put it like that, there would always be a concern, perhaps, that she would have been attacked by somebody who may have been a recent immigrant, may have been a recent asylum seeker. And I think it was quite right that Devon and Cornwall squashed that idea right from the outset. No, this was a white British man.
Yeah, maybe to forestall others, using misinformation in the way that has happened and no doubt would happen again. Stephen Roberts, thank you so much for joining us. Now, welcome to the programme then, live on the ad, Jonathan Hall, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation. Hi to you, Jonathan.
Hi.
What are your thoughts, Jonathan?
Well, my thoughts are that the police are getting a bit better at their comms in the sense that they do say the race and nationality, and they have to be consistent, and they are at the moment. That's good. I don't understand why Devon and Cornwall Police were steering the public away from the idea that this was a terrorist case, and I don't know why they didn't simply say they had an open mind as the motivation. And I think they probably broke one of the golden rules of investigations, which is not to comment on live investigations in case new facts emerge. So that aspect is slightly regrettable, I think. The bigger picture, of course, is it's incredibly worrying. I mean, it's a terrible murder of a former MP. And, I mean, thinking about the picture more generally, this actually is what terrorism legislation potentially, leaving aside Ann Widdecombe's case where it is a live investigation, I don't want to say anything about that at all. But generally, MPs do need to be protected, because once you start attacking MPs, then you really are striking a blow against the core of democracy. The vital organs of democracy are in Parliament, of whatever colour and stripe and political persuasion. So I think this is something that really does affect the national security of the country. And
you support the identification of the man in custody as being white and British. Does that mean you would say that should happen in every serious case?
Yes, and if you remember after Southport, I was the one who said that it should have been done in relation to the race and nationality of Axel Rudagabana, because there was that wild internet lie going around that it was someone called Ali Al-Shaktani, a small boat person. Sometimes these cases will involve people who've arrived on small boats, but it's far better just to be honest with the public and give them sober information about race and nationality. So absolutely, I support it.
All right, let me just turn to the argument coming from the Reform side that they are at particular risk, at greater risk of an attack or some sort of offence of this kind, of depending on what we find out about what happened here. Do you buy that argument? Have you sympathy for the argument that Reform is particularly exposed, or can it be said that MPs across the spectrum could be the target of some sort of attack from anyone, almost anyone, on any kind of motive?
Yeah, I'm a bit wary of this question because if I generalise and I point out that MPs from across the spectrum have been killed, obviously Joe Cox and the attack on Stephen Timms and David Amess, it makes it look as if I'm trivialising, which I'm not. I'm deeply, deeply sympathetic and worried for any MP, including in particular the Reform MPs. So I take it incredibly seriously. The sad fact is that recent polling shows that people are more supportive now of political violence, and if that's what it turns out to have been in Ann Widdecombe's case, then that is a very worrying and troubling sign.
Yes, and I suppose it is also worth pointing out that there is no such thing as perfect security.
There is no such thing as perfect security. Everything is about trade-offs, absolutely. But we have to think about the pipeline of people coming into politics, and if it turns out that it was a political attack of some description on someone who'd retired, then obviously the message it sends to people who are thinking about having a life in politics in the future is a pretty bleak one. So I think it's very, very important. And I mean, it's not the only aspect of terrorism. There's the arrests of the 12 people who were, I mean, from the sound of it, were conspiring to murder. I mean, the police have put out a statement where they're talking about what could have been a terrible attack on a religious event. So it's not the only focus of terrorism legislation, but it's a particularly important one to protect the vital organs of democracy.
Yeah, well, if that does turn out to be the case, it is right and proper to mention that as well in the context of this discussion. We don't know too much about the facts because we cannot, but it says something about the climate of the times.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I read the BBC News article and it talked about the nature of the arrest. So it was an arrest under Section 41. That's a very strong Terrorism Act power, which allows you to detain someone for up to 14 days. And also others were arrested for conspiracy to murder. So although it's an investigation, we don't know what the evidence will be. It sounds as if the police had some very, very worrying sort of threat to life type information. So yeah, it is very worrying, and well done the police for stopping it.
All right, and thank you for your thoughts and comments. Thank you, Jonathan Hall, the independent reviewer of terror legislation.